Everybody, Mr. Lavasser again. Side two of our lesson on the Earth's plates and how they move. So let's go to that now. Thank you for joining me, and we'll talk more about how things like fossils can show us that the Earth's plates have moved over time. Again, this is the Amplify curriculum, 7th grade, and this is the language analysis section. All right, on side one, we talked about how this particular fossil, Mesosaurus, is found in both eastern South America and western Africa, and that distribution of fossils, or where those fossils are found, is based on the fact that long ago, millions of years ago, the continents were connected, and they've been moving further and further apart ever since. So let's move on to the next section, which is side two, and here we have a paragraph that I cut and pasted out of the Amplify curriculum, okay? And then what I did is I broke it into the individual ideas, the individual clauses that are found in that paragraph. So let's read the instructions. Here is a real example of a paragraph from Amplify, grade 7, science, plate motion, mystery of the Mesosaurus. The paragraph has been broken into individual clauses, ideas. Use the functional analysis key to analyze the clauses. Here's your analysis key over here on the right. Find processes, science vocabulary words, connecting words, subject and predicate. Identify the zigzag pattern and any place that a subject is repeated, a ziggity. Watch your teacher show you how. Okay, so first let's read the paragraph together. Scientists can use the fossils of an extinct creature that are called the Mesosaurus to study Earth's past. They find these fossils embedded in hard, solid rock. Mesosaurus fossils have been found in South America and Africa. Mesosaurus means middle lizard. And these creatures were ancient lizards that looked a bit like small crocodiles with narrow heads and long tails. They had webbed feet and grew to about a meter, 3.3 feet long. The earliest fossil evidence for these animals indicates that they were alive about 300 million years ago, and their species went extinct about 260 million years ago. Mesosaurus were among the first reptiles to live in and around water, and they spent most of their lives in the water. However, their bodies weren't built for swimming long distances, so they stayed close to the land. Like all reptiles, Mesosaurus had lungs instead of gills, and they breathed in oxygen from the air instead of getting it underwater. Their nostrils were located high up, which allowed them to breathe air through their nostrils, while the rest of their bodies stayed underwater. Okay, so each of these lines, we're going to look for distinct parts of understanding how science's writing is put together. So I'm going to go to my draw on my Word document, and I'm going to get out my pink highlighter. I'm going to do a few of the sentences or a few of the clauses for the verbs. Scientists can use the fossils of an extinct creature. Remember, each one of these lines is one idea or one clause, so there should only be one process, okay? Even though we have two words here, this is still one process. Are called, can use, each of those two words, but one action. They find those fossils embedded in hard rock, solid rock. Mesosaurus fossils have been found. Three words, one process, in South America and Africa. Mesosaurus means middle lizard. And these creatures were ancient lizards that looked a bit like small crocodiles. with narrow heads and long tails. I'm going to stop underlining or highlighting the processes for a little bit, and I'm going to go now and I'm going to change to yellow. Oops, I guess I'm not going to, I'm going to change to yellow, not use big again. Good. So these are 4 specific science words, such as fossils, extinct creatures, Mesosaurus. You might choose Earth. And I'm not going to double up on these words, but each line essentially you could say has a specific science content word. We're beginning to repeat the same words over and over again though, but that's all right. That's part of science writing. Okay, so essentially every line has a science content word, a vocabulary word that would relate pretty much only to science, and just about, well, every line must have an action or a process, because these are ideas, and ideas have 2 parts. They have a subject, something to talk about, and they have a predicate, information about the subject, which almost always starts with an action in English. Now, notice that not every line ends in a period. Okay, notice that not every line ends in a period. Those that do end in a period, that's the end of one completed thought. But if you don't have a period, that means that there's going to be more of the same sentence. And often you need a linking word. So I'm going to do those with green. You need a linking word or a connecting word to join those 2 ideas together. For example, scientists can use the fossils of an ancient creature. We have a subject and a predicate. That are called the Mesosaurus, to study Earth's past. That is a word that links these 2 together. What does that mean? Extinct creature. That's what that means. That's what that means. So that refers to the extinct creatures, which are called the Mesosaurus. So let's see if we find any more linking words. So we have a period, so there's usually not going to be a linking word. A period, so there should be no linking word. A period, so that thought is over, and we won't see a linking word. Here's a comma, and look, there's a linking word at the beginning of the next sentence, one of the most important of the connecting or linking words in English. Comma, and I'm going to highlight the comma too, because that comma is an important part in this particular way of joining 2 ideas. So we have the first idea, Mesosaurus means middle lizard, comma, and, new thought, these creatures were ancient lizards. Look, there's no period. And the next line begins with a linking word, that. That looked like small crocodiles. What does that mean? That means the ancient lizards. That means the ancient lizards. So it's a connecting word that refers to something already discussed. That looked like small crocodiles with narrow heads and long tails, period. So we're not going to see a linking word here. And I'm going to erase those, whoops, I'm going to erase those lines that I drew. But I am going to put back the process. Okay, so next, let's underline the subjects and the predicates. So you can use your draw, you can use your pens. What I'm going to use, I went to Insert, Shapes, and then I made a line, okay, and I changed those lines colors. So for example, I can make a red line or I can make a blue line, okay. And what I've done is I've just left red line and blue line here for you. So you can just copy that line, go to home, copy, paste, and then you have another red line. So let's go all the way to the top. In our first subject, once again, our subject comes before the verb. Scientists. That's what this sentence is talking about. It's talking about scientists. And I could use that one that I just made, or I could come down here and copy this one, copy, paste, and now I have a blue line. Scientists is the subject. What information do we have about scientists? We have scientists can use fossils of an extinct creature. Subject, scientist. Information about scientists, can use fossils of an extinct creature. All right. Let's look at the next clause. And the subject is that. And we've already said that that means extinct creatures. Once again, the subject, that, came before the verb or before the process or action. There. What about these extinct creatures? Well, these extinct creatures are called the Mesosaurus to study Earth's past. That sentence doesn't quite make sense, but I did copy and paste it. Maybe I didn't copy and paste it right. The next sentence, or the next clause, since we had a period, we're beginning a new sentence, they, and what does they refer to? They find these fossils embedded in hard rock. They must be the scientists who use fossils. They must be the scientists. And what about these scientists? Well, they find these fossils embedded in hard, solid rock. Period. And what's the next subject? I will let you take a guess at what the next subject is. And if you guessed Mesosaurus fossils, you are right. Mesosaurus fossils. How did you know that was the subject? Well, that's what the sentence is talking about. And it becomes before the verb. So this is what we're talking about. And what are we saying about Mesosaurus fossils? We are saying that they have been found in South America and in Africa. And what is the subject of the next sentence? Mesosaurus. And what information? So if that's the subject, the predicate must give me information or develop that idea. And what information about Mesosaurus do we find? We find that Mesosaurus means middle lizard. And what's the next subject? The next subject is these creatures. These creatures. And what information do we have about these creatures? We find out that they were ancient lizards. Subject, what you're talking about. Predicate, information about the subject. Okay, we'll stop there for this part, and we'll go on to the next thing, which is finding the zigzag pattern. We've had a few lessons about the zigzag pattern now. The zigzag pattern happens when a piece of information in the predicate becomes the subject of the next sentence. For example, scientists can use fossils of an ancient creature. And what does that mean? That means ancient creature. So we have the zig of the scientists can use fossils of an extinct creature, and the zag of that extinct creature That idea being brought down to become the subject of the new sentence. That is the zigzag pattern. And let's see if we can see another one quickly. Here's another one. Ancient lizards that looked like. So what does that mean? That means ancient lizards. So we have these creatures, the subject, were ancient lizards. That's the information about the creatures. A piece of that information was brought down and it becomes the new subject. So we've discussed the zigzag pattern before, but one thing we haven't talked about yet is the ziggity. The ziggity. And that's when the subject is repeated. Instead of taking the end or the predicate and making it a new subject, they take a subject and they use it more than once. Let me back up to the top. For example, scientists. Here we have this subject and it's brought down and they use that subject again. Scientists can use fossils of an extinct creature, zag, that are called Mesosaurus to study the Earth's past. They, who is they? Who are they? Well, they can't be Mesosaurus. It must be the scientists. The scientists, so now again we have the scientists find these fossils embedded in solid rock. Mesosaurus fossils well, aren't we taking the subject that is that, which is these ancient creatures, and bringing it down and making the next subject Mesosaurus or Mesosaurus fossils? And isn't the next subject Mesosaurus? Isn't the next subject Mesosaurus as well? So we have Mesosaurus fossils or Mesosaurus, and then we have Mesosaurus again. And look, these creatures. These creatures. And what are those creatures? Those creatures are the organism, the dinosaur called Mesosaurus. Ancient lizards that look like. And don't we yet have another example of, oops, yep. These creatures, the ancient lizards that look like, so we've gotten this. The idea has been brought down from the predicate, and it's also a repeat of the subject as well. So I'll leave the rest for you to do. And so what are we analyzing for here? We're analyzing for actions. And what do the actions do? They separate the subject from the predicate. What the idea is talking about from the information about the subject. Just about every clause has a language-specific, a science-specific vocabulary word. Sometimes we link two clauses together to make one long sentence with two ideas, and often that requires a connecting word. And we have the zigzag pattern. We end one clause, some piece of information in the predicate becomes the subject of the next clause. That's the zigzag pattern. And sometimes we repeat the pattern. We repeat the topic. For example, Mesosaurus is repeated here, Mesosaurus. And up above, scientists. And we repeat that subject again here, where they use they. So by analyzing science text, we can come to a deeper understanding of what this text is talking about, because it really allows us to dig into how the people have written this text, and that allows us to gain a deeper understanding of the information. All right, guys, I know that was a lot of information, but you can play this video a few times. Thank you for your attention.